the downside to private lending is it tends to be very relationship based, and it tends to be kind of a limiting factor is the amount of capital we have to lend out. I mean, because it's our own capital or capital we have direct control over. So it tends to be like once you find a private lender, you want to work with them over and over and over again, because that's what happens with my borrowers. It just rolls from deal to deal to deal because we have that history, we have that trust. Whereas hard money lending is very transactional and it tends to be very liquid. They have millions and billions of dollars behind them. So if it's something where, you think your private lender might not have the capital available in time, you can still use hard money at some point. It's not to say we're not trying to vilify hard money at all. It's just, it's got its pros and cons, just like private lending.
For sure. So if you can walk us through that first deal, you mentioned it was COVID. You met, you knew somebody who needed some money. What did that deal actually look like from your side? Because typically we're always talking about the actual active investor side. They find the deal, they fix it up. But how does it look from your side as the private money lender?
So that one was kind of interesting. He originally was going to buy the property outright with the hard money loan. He actually went back to the seller and the seller agreed to do a subject to deal for 4 months. So I actually ended up coming back with a second lien position hold. So I was a second mortgage on that property. And basically I was just funding the renovations and a couple months of the holding costs for the first mortgage. So whereas an active investor is going to walk into the deal and, really worry about the ARV, the condition of the property, negotiating with the seller, organizing all the contractors, what's their time frame, what's the supply chain look like. As a private lender, yes, we're still concerned about what the potential after repair value looks like. We're less concerned about, locating the contractors and, yes, we're going to take a look at the scope of work and make sure your plans for the property are adequate or sufficient for the property and the market that it's in. But really we are looking at, in my opinion, I am looking at the borrower more than I'm looking at the property. There are other private lenders that switch that around. So I call it kind of that 80-20. So 80% is the borrower, 20% is the property for me. But I've met other private lenders where it's the exact opposite, where it's 80% the property and 20% the borrower. But my philosophy is the property's not going to renovate itself. The property's not going to rent itself. The property's not going to sell itself. It's the person doing that. So I really want to get to know them as a person. I talk to them frequently. If it weren't COVID, I'd be going over to their house for barbecues. I know all their kids' names. So it's very much a relationship-based model. So I really got to know him. I got to talk to him. He's an active duty service member. We just kind of hit it off as organic, friends and people. And I love Facebook stalking people when I have a new potential borrower. So pro tip number one, if you're getting into real estate, make a real estate specific Facebook profile. I don't want to see pictures of you out drinking with the buddies on Friday night. So I Facebook stalked him, friend request, and then I was scrolling through and it was, people want to invest with people that they know, like, and trust. And so I'm scrolling through and I'm seeing pictures of like his dog and his kids on vacation. There's not a whole lot of like flashing cash in front of an Italian sports car they rented for the day kind of thing. So I was like, okay, I get the nice warm and fuzzies. Yes, you can put on a face and a facade on Facebook, but that's just kind of one of the tools I specifically use. But the other thing I do is I ask for professional references and I talk to those people and ask, what was your experience with this particular person as far as a real estate investor? Were things paid? Were they easy to get along with? And that's really where, in my opinion, you're going to find the gold. You're going to find the truth, because it might feel like everybody's involved in real estate, but in actuality, it tends to be a really small community. So if you start burning bridges with other people in real estate, everybody else is going to find out very, very quickly.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's why I really like the professional references. Obviously, we're collecting other documentation, making sure they have the assets on board to do these types of things. They have the experience, but to me, it's really about the character of the person. So can they make good, logical decisions in a timely basis, and we tend to have the same goals. That's the other thing I really like about private lending versus being a landlord. Private lenders, we are in collaboration with the active investor. We both want the same thing. We both want the property renovated. We both want the property sold. We both want the property refinanced. Whereas, in the landlord situation, it tends to have very opposite goals. The renter wants to live in a Taj Mahal for $10 a month. And, the landlord wants the maximum, they can get for rent with the minimum expenses. So it just it sets up more of an adversarial relationship than doing private lending, which is what I like. It's really about real estate investing, since you're talking to kind of newer people and, people that want to break it down. There's so many ways to invest in real estate. And I think the one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is find a way of investing that fits your personality.
Yeah.
I hated being a landlord because I don't want to have those adversarial drama fueled relationships in my life. Whereas private lending, I get the exact opposite. It's very collaborative. We're friends. We can make deals happen. Like I said, we both have the same goals. So I think when you're talking to people about real estate investing, especially new people, that needs to be the first question. Because if you sign yourself up for a BRRRR boot camp and you show up at the Marriott over the weekend to learn all you can about BRRRR, nobody's going to talk to you about, is BRRRR the right method for you and your goals and your personality? Right. They're just going to teach you about BRRRR. And so I think that previous step really needs to happen before somebody takes the leap into real estate investing.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I had a similar experience when I was getting started. I would just follow a lot of the gurus on social media. I got sucked in a little bit. People just saying, "Oh, this is the way to go if you want to make a." I got sucked in, but it didn't really actually align with my goals right now. So 100%, whatever you're going to do in real estate, just know, okay, do you need, what are you actually looking to get out of it as far as like money, as far as lifestyle, because different strategies have different outcomes in the short term and the long term. So definitely a key there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just really funny because I run into people, and most of the time in real estate, when they're investing in real estate, they say they want to quit their W-2 job. That's kind of the most, they want, they quote unquote financial freedom, but they don't have a clarity on what financial freedom looks like for them. They haven't sat down and, for example, even looked at what their expenses are on a monthly basis. And the other thing is they say they want financial freedom, but in reality, what they really want is time freedom and potentially geographical freedom. And doing a private lending business, I call it a business in a backpack, because really, as a military spouse, if my spouse gets stationed somewhere that I'm willing to move to, I could just pick up the computer and take it. As long as I have air conditioning, electricity, and a phone, I can do private lending from anywhere in the world. So I think that's another component that people kind of don't really think about, is they just say financial independence, but they don't have a clear idea what that means. Because technically you could run, 20 single family homes as a landlord in the same market, but that is not a passive investment. You might have enough to, cover your monthly bills, but you're running around from property to property, fixing a leak, doing this, moving people out, doing inspections, screening tenants. That's technically financial independence, but that might not be what you were looking for.
Right. Exactly. So bringing it back to that first deal you did, you mentioned it was a subject to, you came up with the mortgage payments and the rehab costs. Can you explain or talk about the actual numbers, how much you put into the deal if you're comfortable, and what you got back in return?
Sure. So he actually ended up taking the property subject to, I believe the standing mortgage was 104,000 roughly. We projected an ARV of about 265. So there was plenty of equity in the deal, which is why I was willing to do a subject to. I'm personally kind of against them, but that's another episode. But I was willing to go in behind a conventional mortgage, because even at that point, we were probably in April by that point. The mortgage companies were freaking out trying to deal with forbearance issues. So realistically, even if he stopped making the mortgage payment on that conventional mortgage, they were not foreclosing anytime soon, because they had more than their hands full. So that was the reason I was comfortable doing a second lien position. Like I said, the borrower I felt very comfortable with. His references all checked out. He had the capital, he had the experience, and there was plenty equity buffer in there for me to say, okay, I'm comfortable doing a second mortgage on this property. I lent him, I believe the first loan was 47.5. And that was going to be doing things like putting on a new roof, putting in new flooring, updating the kitchen, adding another bathroom to the home so that it actually had a true master bathroom. and then doing some landscaping work on the outside. And really, it was supposed to be just kind of an in and out project, because I don't want to fund, I'm very specific in what I want to fund, and most private lenders are. So I want to fund things that are going to be thrown up on the market for a retail buyer versus somebody that's trying to burr and refinance it into their own name. And I also want to do something that I would personally kind of consider a minor to moderate rehab. I don't want like major structural changes. You're changing the roof line, like just the way that, the supply chain is going with COVID right now. I don't want to be involved in a property for 6-9 months because we're waiting on something, or, somebody's backlogged.
Thanks for watching that clip from the Real Estate Investing Made Simple podcast. If you want to see the entire interview, go ahead and click the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned for all future episodes.